wants the war to go away. He's looking for his next shiny object, whether that be Cuba or another midterms Hail Mary. We'll stay tuned. However, this deal is just a bunch of pinky promises from terrorist supporters that has his supporters back home more upset even than his critics. Former Trump campaign senior advisor Steve Cortes is with us. Brigadier General John Teichert as well. Gents, good to see you. Steve, I want to start with you because I think universally we can agree that vis-a-vis Iran and what this does to Iran, the mullahs, their support of terrorism, their military, their desire to get a nuclear weapon, it sucks. That said, politically, it may be genius. Gas prices, oil prices ahead of the midterms was the big thing. It's the thing that, Steve, you have been talking about. Oil prices have now plummeted over the past 48, 72 hours, down by a third. Current price, $76 a barrel. That puts it heading towards where it was before the war started. Is that enough for American voters to not care about the deal with Iran?
Well, listen, no, I think they do care, of course, that we have a good deal. And I'll defer to the general as far as just how much military damage did we do. But I suspect it was very significant, the damage done by the U.S. military. However, here's the thing. My lane is not the military. Mine is campaigns and polling and winning elections. And what is very clear is that the American people simply do not support a drawn-out, lengthy, expensive war of choice on the other side of the world. And in a republic, if you're going to wage that kind of war, you must have the support of the people. Okay, so we don't have it right now, and so we've got to get to a deal.
So let me just put a pin on this. I think what you're making my point. The fact that the war is over, how it ends, doesn't really matter to the voters. What matters is the price of gas, and that's what Donald Trump figured out.
Well, I think you're being a bit crass when you say it's just the price of gas. That is important, but what matters to Americans is the home front, are that we have significant challenges right here at home. Those are more important to American voters than the idea of what kind of a threat the mullahs are halfway across the world. And when it does come to foreign policy, what Americans are increasingly realizing is that the projection of power and any interventionism should be here in this hemisphere. And that is much more welcome to the American people than another Middle East war, something this country has not done very well now for decades.
Okay, so we watch Cuba, which I feel as though is coming. General, do you agree with my assessment of the deal itself as it's written?
Leland, I do, and I'm really concerned if you compare where we were before the war started and where we are now, we're losing in every appreciable metric. That before the strait was open and now there are strings attached. Before the war, credit to President Trump, we had destroyed their nuclear program in Midnight Hammer. Now it's still destroyed. But really the metric that concerns me is that before the war, the regime was strangled in sanctions and seized assets. And now very quickly, they're going to get hundreds of billions of dollars to reconstitute anything that they lost during the war. I'm very concerned that we're putting them in a stronger position than they were before the war started.
Now, to be fair, President Trump says that if they do not act according to their end of the bargain, which the Iranians have never done, he's going to start bombing again. Take a listen.
But there's nothing enforceable in the deal itself. Is that correct?
Doesn't have to be. I let him know. I said, look, if you don't adhere to the agreement, I don't want to do that, but we're going to bomb the hell out of you. And I don't think that they're going to veer from the agreement. What else am I going to do? Am I going to say I'm going to take you to court? Let me take you to court. Let me sue you. No, we're going to bomb the hell out of them if they violate the agreement.
Bombing the hell out of them is what President Trump has said before. And to be fair, for 40 however many days, we did. That didn't change their behavior. Is the Islamic Revolutionary Guard, not that they don't believe them, but they don't really care whether they get bombed in the way they got bombed before?
Well, Leland, they would be nuts to renege on this deal because it benefits them in so many ways. I don't think he needs to carry through a threat that they don't believe he would carry through anyway, because they get massive benefits from this deal. And if I was the Iranian regime, I would follow it to a T because it benefits me and causes my adversary to lose as a result.
Well,
Leland, can
Steve,
I
go ahead.
ask you, because I think you're being very tough here on this situation, and I think unfairly so. Okay, if Tehran is that much of a threat, you have one of the most formidable militaries in the world in Israel. You have perhaps the biggest concentration of wealth in the entire world in the Gulf states. It seems to me that those two entities combined, between the economic and military resources, should be handling this problem in their neighborhood rather than the American taxpayer or the American military.
Well, that is a perfectly reasonable position. I think there's arguments against it, but you make a point that a lot of Americans say, which is, why are we spending blood and treasure to do the work of the Israelis and the Gulf states? When it comes to this deal, President Trump was asked about the points that the general made. Take a listen.
A wise man once said in January of 2020, Iran never won a war, but never lost a negotiation. That wise man.
Who said that?
Donald Trump.
Oh, that's what I thought you were going to say.
So how do you go back to the United States and convince a skeptical American public that this deal is a
look,
win?
Here they lost militarily, okay? It's very tough because I know that no matter what, if I would go, by the way, if I'd go another 3 or 4 weeks, those same people that are critical would say, he went too long, he should have done, no matter what.
I think, Steve, what you're saying is that many have predicted the political end or political comeuppance of Donald Trump for the past 11 years. They have all been wrong because they misjudged his voters and supporters. And I think what you're saying to me and to the audience is that what he just articulated there shows he understands where his voters are.
Yeah, I think that's exactly correct. And he realizes that the American people have now been dealing with 5 years of inflation that middle-class folks cannot handle. Now, that is primarily Biden's fault. But the point is, they now blame overwhelmingly Donald Trump and the governing Republicans for this inflation problem that they cannot handle. That is their priority. And this war, of course, is only exacerbating that already existing anxiety. And so they're not pro-war. We know it overwhelmingly from the polling. They want to focus on the home front, on guarding our sovereignty, our borders, worrying about this hemisphere, and that is a reasonable demand from the American people.
General, it's very difficult to find anybody with experience in either the Middle East or in the military that speaks positively about this deal, either publicly or privately. I certainly have my sources, you have yours. How, from your sources inside the military currently and retired flag officers, how do they now reposition the U.S. military to restore deterrence when it's clear that short-term domestic political considerations may be more important to this president than long-term American deterrence to our enemies?
Leland, the key to deterrence is convincing an adversary that you've got both strength of capability, we absolutely do, but strength of will. And not just strength of will today, but strength of will that sustains. And I'm most concerned that our credibility took a hit during the last 100 days or so, and now other adversaries around the world understand poignantly the truth that all they need to do is make it sufficiently painful for the long term on the United States, and we will walk away, and that is a hindrance to our ability to deter.
Yeah. There are so many historical parallels to both of the points that you gentlemen have made. Steve Cortes, General John Teichert. Gents, thank you both.